Okay, oh yes, okay. I know that you know that I tell all of you when you're speaking on the microphone, hold it as though it were a trumpet. Okay, this doesn't work, you know. It's not going to bite you, we need to hear you. But now that it's up here, I realize how heavy it is. So, all right, so we've waited a long, long time to hear today's program. Trying to find a time when Paul Klemme is free for 10 minutes is probably quite a big assignment, because he's a very, very busy man making music. Good for all of us that that's the case. So I'm just going to give you a quick background of we'll try to work this out between us. Paul got his Bachelor of Music in Organ Performance at Central Methodist College in Fayette, Missouri. Then he came over to the West Coast and got his master's in Choral Conducting and Organ Performance from the University of Washington, and stayed on to do his doctorate in choral conducting at the University of Washington. This is the primary avenue that people take when they want to go into professional church music. It'd be really a good thing if you can play the organ and do both, actually, at least from my standpoint as well. Then he spent, I think, 9 years in Eastern Washington University as a director of choral studies. Then he came west for our benefit. Since he came west 29 years ago, yeah. He's been the Director of Music Ministries at St. Paul's Episcopal Church. For those of you who've been around for a really long time, he followed the Venerable May Dudley. Does that name ring some bells? Not as many as I thought, maybe. So in that capacity, he conducts 4 choirs. He's the parish organist, and he has evolved a wonderful evensong concert series. He's a very, very busy man. A lot of people think that's enough. No. So Paul has been a member of the Willamette faculty over the years, directing the men's choir and teaching organ. There's also an organ over in the recital hall. And for 29 years, he's led the Willamette Master Chorus, which had been founded by Wallace Long, and Wallace turned that over to Paul 29 years ago. I understand he's also a lecturer on the circuit on the works of J.S. Bach, one of my favorite composers as well. But so I don't want to delay this any longer. As you see, you've all got handouts, and I think they're all gone. Maybe, I don't know. In any case, there's some more back there. There will be time for questions and Paul knows the schedule, so just enjoy and learn. Please welcome Paul Klemme.
All right, let's test. How's everything? Can you hear okay? All right, so this is going to be my speaking voice, Dave. I'm going to try to use this the whole time. Friends, it's so good to be with you. I love this group. Your mission, your desire to be in community, your desire to learn is quite amazing. I am so impressed by you. And I love coming here because I get to see my friends. And who knows, maybe someday I'll just be sitting with you. Because you can see the gray hair, right? So I would like to just tell you a little bit more about me so that you can connect with me a little bit, because we're going to spend a couple hours together. Solveig, thank you for the kind introduction and for the invitation to be here today to talk about a subject that's very dear to me. I've spent all of my life learning and playing the organ. And so Solveig said that I grew up in Missouri. I'm a Missouri boy, Midwest boy, went to a very, very tiny little high school in a little town called Hermann, Missouri. So if you know Missouri, we're talking about an hour west of St. Louis, right on the Missouri River. So my dad was a preacher. He was in the United Church of Christ. We lived in the parsonage. Has anybody ever heard of a parsonage before? Those are long gone these days, but that's where we lived. So my dad walked out of the front door and across the street and went to his work. And my mother said, all of us kids had to take piano for a couple years, and then you could decide if you wanted to go on. Does that sound familiar to some of you? Your mother said, you got to take piano. You'll regret it if you don't. So there I was, 8 years old, taking piano from the church organist. And the church organist lived a block away. We knew everybody. And the church organist started me on piano, and then I will never forget this. When I was 11, she said, you know what, let's go try this piano piece on the organ. I think it'll sound really nice. I'll never forget it. I knew I was 11 years old, and I knew I wanted to do this. That's how young I was. So there was a great impression on me about playing the organ, and it was a part of my DNA with my father being a minister, and I could just walk right across the street and practice. My organ teacher, my piano teacher, who was the organist of the church, she served for 63 years at that church. And so she lived to be 99, and it's just an amazing story. So there's that impression on me. Now I'm trying to pass that on to the next generation. So I'm in my 29th year here at Willamette University, my second home. I love being here at this great university and being able to learn from the students, and I hope that I'm able to be an inspiration as well to them. Now, I have been the organ associate professor, if you will, for those 29 years. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the profession before we talk about this particular organ. So in the 29 years that I've been here, I have been teaching students, sometimes 2 students, sometimes 3. I might have had one semester where I had 4 students. And there's a couple semesters where I had 1 student. As of 2 years ago, I have 0. Okay? So it's a disappointing thing to notice in my profession, that the profession of organ playing, whether it be as a church organist or a practicing recitalist, is diminishing a bit. And you're probably, being inquisitive minds here, you're wondering why is that reason? What is going on? So there's the digital age, right? Everything's computerized, everything is available to us like that. And so I think that young people want results like that. And when I tell a student that's interested in the organ, maybe that 11-year-old that might come to me and say, wow, I'd like to play the organ. And I'm saying, you gotta have 5 years of piano first. So that's a requirement in my mind. I mean, I've taught students who haven't had much piano, and that student and I regret that, because you need to be able to have facility with your hands. If you can't play a Mozart sonata or a Bach invention, then you need to learn it and get familiar with all of your scales, be able to get your way around the geography of the keyboard before you even begin to think about putting your feet with your hands, okay? So the thing about the organ, I think that you can see very clearly, is that underneath the keyboards, there's a whole division of another keyboard for the feet, okay? So the coordination for hands and feet is a monstrous thing. And so when I tell a student, okay, let's go for it, but I'm going to tell you, you can play the piano really well right now, you're going to get real frustrated day one trying to play the organ, because it's going to feel different, it's going to be really hard when you put your feet with your hands. And so I basically tell them it takes about 18 months before it feels like you're riding a bicycle. I mean, you remember when you got on your bicycle and you had to have those training wheels, and then eventually they just came off and it was like, here I go. And that's sort of a little bit of the way it is with the organ, that you feel so frustrated trying to coordinate all of this, and all of a sudden one day it just kind of clicks, and then you just keep going. And then for me, now at my ripe old age, I just sit down and I can play anything pretty much at sight. But you know, it took a while. I think that students nowadays want that result faster than that 18 months. They're not very patient about saying, okay, I'm going to practice every day for 2 hours. It's monumental to tell a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old, you know what, you have to practice 2 hours a day. Where are they going to find the time in this society? It's really hard, isn't it? So I think that that's a factor, ladies and gentlemen, in sort of the erosion of the profession, I'm sorry to say. Also, it's a market thing. So let's talk about how can you make a living as an organist? Well, I knew when I was 11 and I had church in my DNA, I knew what it took to be an organist and to play for church. Some young people today might not have any church background, but they want to play the organ. Well, as far as making a living doing that, I can probably count on just these two hands the people in the world that make a living concertizing on the organ. That's about it. There's not many. So this also goes back to classical music a little bit too, right? Why is the classical music audience declining? Because we've got it at our fingertips. Here we go again. We can tune into YouTube and we can listen to anything we want. It's that automatic. But there's nothing like live performance, right? I don't need to lecture you that. There's nothing like hearing this organ, because this organ is wind driven. It's all pretty natural. You can tell the difference between a pipe organ that's wind driven and a digital sounding organ. I think you can tell the difference. So there's a couple of the factors of why there's not so much interest in the organ, but I want you to know that I'm still cheerleading for us to have great organists. I was telling Solveig that there are a lot of companies, there's probably 20 to 30 companies in the United States that are building organs, just like this. And they are thriving. But Solveig, I'm wondering who's going to play the organs. I'm a little worried about that. Because my generation, when I was studying in the 70s and the 80s, there were 30 of us majoring in organ at one school, 30 students. And the trajectory of organ study around the country right now is that organ departments are folding, they're closing up, and there are no students. So Willamette is not this albatross, and it's not because of the teacher. I don't think, is that we just aren't attracting the students for those various reasons. So I'll finish up with my Willamette connection. This university is extraordinary. If you want to study the organ, you should come to Willamette University. Not necessarily because of the teacher, but we have this organ here. This organ is what we call a mechanical action organ. It's a tracker action organ. Tracker means that when you press the key, there are trackers of rods. You can actually see the rods. I took the desk out so you can see them, and I'm going to invite you up in just a little bit to take a closer look. There's no electricity involved in this organ, except to pump the air in. That's it. Now, if you've gone to concerts in Hudson Hall, that organ is a digital electronic organ. So of course, in the 70s, the 80s, and we started doing electronic organs that could match sounds digitally. And so the organ in Hudson Hall was built in 1999 by the Rogers Organ Company. And did you know Rogers Organ Company, now owned by a Japanese company, that company is in Hillsboro, Oregon. The world headquarters for Rogers Organ is in Hillsboro. Okay. So that's the organ that we have in Hudson, and all of the sounds come through powered speakers. There are no pipes in Hudson Hall. Now I'm going to tell you one more secret about Willamette. There's a third organ on campus, and I don't know if you realize that, but in the attic of Smith Auditorium, there's a little practice organ. The organ is, oh gosh, it's probably just that quadrant of the room. It's very small. It's a practice organ. Go in and practice, and it's got 2 manuals, just like this instrument does, and it's a pipe organ. And it's just a little guy built by the Aeolian Skinner Company. I don't know if you've ever heard that name, but Aeolian Skinner is probably one of the preeminent organ building companies in the United States. It was based in Boston. It no longer exists. but it's still kind of the classic organ that we think of. So that's the third kind of organ. This one is mechanical action. The one in Hudson Hall is electronic. Everything about it is electronic. And the one in Smith Auditorium is a pipe organ that we call electro-pneumatic. In other words, when I press a key on that organ, it sends an electric signal to a pallet opening to push the air through and play the pipe. So there's an electric connection from the key to the pipe. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. How about that, huh? If you want to study the organ, come to Willamette University. You have 3 different kinds of organs to play all of the literature that was ever. And there's not too many universities, except for the big ones, that can match what Willamette has here. And so I'm very privileged to be the curators of these organs, and I just wish I had students. I'm trying my best, but it's hard. All right. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts. And we're going to have a traveling show here, so I'm going to get you to get up and walk, because you're not going to sit for 2 hours. It's not going to happen. What's the difference between the piano and the organ? I want you to hear the difference, and then we're going to talk about it, because this professor today is going to ask you questions. So when we hear this C major chord, what's the difference in sound when we hear that C major chord right here on this organ? Can you kind of hear the difference? Can you hear the wind is actually happening? So this piano, and then listen to how the wind interprets my touch. All right, class, what is the difference what I'm dealing with when I play the piano and then I'm playing with the organ? What's different? Say it. Percussion. So this organ this piano right here is a percussion instrument for sure. Great. So there's hammers that are striking the string. There was another hand. Please.
Sustain.
Sustain. So how does the piano sustain? Do you know how the damper pedal, right? Everybody knows about the 3 pedals on the piano. Okay, Raina, I'm going to tell you now. Okay, so there's 3 pedals down here on the bottom of the piano, and the one on the very right, I can push it down and then it will sustain. I'm lifting my hand and it sustains. Or if I don't have the pedal down, it stops. Now with the organ, there's no sustain pedal, right? I can't sustain this unless I just hold it. Okay, how long do you have? Sound goes away. So if I'm going to have sustained sound on the organ, I have to hold the key down. What else is different about the piano and the organ? Come on. Say it again. Decay. Correct. So when the piano is sounded, on the organ I can hold it forever, but it's going away right now, right? It's decaying. Okay. Excellent. What other things? Go ahead, Neil. Volume. Right. Neil, for extra credit. How do I get more volume on the organ?
You have pedals at the bottom that you can push back and forth, make it softer for volume.
Right. So Neil has earned extra credit today, everybody. Okay. So I have these pedals down in the middle of the organ, so that if I play a sound here and I play my C major chord, I can make it softer. So I don't know if you can see. Some of you in the back might be able to. I don't know if the front can, but way in the back of the organ, there are shutters. And I'm going to, if you look way up at the top and see if you can see the shutters opening and closing. Can you see it? Okay, so there are pipes in that particular part of the organ, and I can get that louder or softer by doing it with my foot. It's like a gas pedal. 5th gear, 1st gear, that kind of thing. Okay, we're doing great. What else? What separates the piano from the organ? Go ahead.
alive because it's like it's breathing.
Okay.
I don't know what quality you would call that, but to me it makes the sound
Yeah.
different as well.
Thank you. All right, so she was saying that the organ seems to be more alive because of the wind-driven part. So understanding that when you strike the key on the piano, there's a hammer that strikes the string. On the organ, what's happening here with this particular organ is that there's air being shoved into the pipe. Okay, so this, if we look at these pipes right here, ladies and gentlemen, the actual sound is coming out right here at what we call the lip. Okay, and the air is being driven from below into the pipe, and there's resonators or there's no resonators at the very top of the pipe. So I think I get what you're saying, that the organ has this sort of organic feel that when you hear it, it's kind of a breathing kind of feel as well. Okay, please add.
It has imitative sounds. The stops, trumpet,
Good for you. Good. There's all kinds of different colors on the organ. The piano is the piano, right? And then we'll discover with when I go through the different families of stops on the organ that there's all kinds of ways that you can almost make your own orchestra in a way, because you've got trumpets and maybe oboes and strings and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of color variation. Keep going. Keep going. Say it. I know you want to. Different timbres. Absolutely right. Very good. All right, let's take a look at the handout here now just a little bit. So I'm not going to go through this history of the pipe organ, but it's a pretty cool layout of the history that I was able to find. So if you were to say what's one of the oldest instruments, it's the organ. Can you believe it? It's one of the oldest instruments of any kind. Now you're thinking, wait a minute. The really, really old ancient things, they were playing flutes, right? Well, guess what? Those are flutes. You're right. Initially, ancient people were figuring out how to make sounds, and they cut a hole in a piece of wood and they blew through it. Also, they were able to figure out how a string, the more you tighten the string, the higher the sound, and that developed. But we're talking before Christ, that there were some elements of how the organ was developing. Okay, and so then when we really get into the medieval times and when we get into Renaissance, that's when we really understand the organ as we know it today. So the organ that you see in front of you is not that different from the way it was 500 years ago. The basic technology, if I can use that word, the basic technology is the same in 2026 as it was in 1526. Basic, okay? Now, of course, electricity changed a lot of that when we introduced electricity. So there's the timeline for you. So as I say, around the 1400s, 1500s, that's when we have basically the same kind of organ that you see in front of you. This particular organ would be the kind of organ that Johann Sebastian Bach would have played. So even in the 20th century, late 20th century, the organ building movement around the world said, we want to build organs the way Bach heard them and played them. And so this would be an example of that kind of organ. Okay, so the only difference between this organ and Bach's organ is that in Bach's day, I would have had to have pumped the bellows to get the air into the reservoirs, and you had to have a second person to come with you to practice or to play a recital or play church. The second person would pump the bellows because there was no electricity to pump the air into the reservoirs. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but otherwise the basic function of this organ, there's no electricity, it's all mechanical action. Okay? So if you turn to the second page where it says a young person's guide, notice I decided to do a young person's guide for this group. Okay? And if you look on the left side of the page, you see the basic function of how an organ works. It's kind of a crude drawing. But do you see the blower on the left? That blower is taking air in and it's sending it into the reservoir, which is in the middle there. The reservoir is holding the air and it's sending it into the place where the pipes are. And when I select a certain note on the keyboard, the pipe opening opens up and the air shoots through the pipe and it goes, ba! So I've got a couple pipes here that I want you to see and to hear. So I'm not pulling your leg. These pipes are driven, the sound is driven by air. That's one of the pipes out of the organ. And this is a reed pipe. It'll sound a little bit like an Oregon duck. Okay. This is a trumpet, in case you wanted to know. Okay. So I mean it. There's air being flown through these pipes. And so if you take a look on the next page, this is a rendering, there's a rendering of the console, but if you look further, do you see all the different shapes of pipes? Do you see that one? All of those pipes are possible in organs around the world. Many of these pipes are in this organ, not all, but those are the different sizes and shapes of the pipes. Now let's take a look at the console. So just go back one page. Can you find the one that says a console? Okay, so for me as an organist, the thing that separates this from the piano is that the piano has one level of keys. Remember how many keys? Remember how many keys are on the piano? Who knows? 88, good job. On the organ, we have 2 manuals. So I can pick different sounds with those 2 manuals. So this is the thing that separates the organ from the piano, is that I now have 2 manuals and I have to decide which manual I'm going to play on, and that of course comes from my schooling. Okay, so in this particular photo, there are 3 manuals, 3 keyboards that I can play with my hand, and then look at the bottom of the drawing, there's yet a 4th keyboard for my feet. Okay, so the keyboard on the organ, ladies and gentlemen, is shorter than the piano. We said 88 keys on the piano. This one has 64. And it's partly due because of the mechanics that make up the organ, and this has been this way for centuries. Basically, that's the way the organ is. And the pedal being the same way. Now, in the old days, there used to be pedal that were just sort of like stubs. They weren't real long pieces where they were just stubs and you just hold a note down. And in the old days, there were no black keys. It was just all what we call white keys. But of course, we developed the chromatic scale during the early Baroque period. Okay, so let's take a look at some other things. Do you remember Neil Quinzel when he said, how do you get it louder? Well, down there by the pedal, you see those 2 gas pedals, if you will. That's how I make the sound louder or softer. Okay? So let's keep going with this diagram. There's these stops on the wind, what we call the wind jam, if you will. So these stops that are on the side over here. This is what the lady was referring to about different timbres, different sounds. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But each one of these stops has its own character. Let's hear a little bit. So the first one that I have drawn is like a flute. Let's listen to the flute on this organ. Pretty close. That's a flute. Now, let us hear maybe something that would be the closest that could come to a violin. This is really hard to make a sound, but this is more of a, not a flute sound, but more of a stringy sound. Listen to the difference from the flute and the string. and then back to the string. So it gives a little bit of a feeling of an orchestra. And then what I call the nuts and bolts of the organ, these are more principal sounds. That's the best word that I know what to use, ladies and gentlemen. So this is sort of the guts, the core of the organ, and this would be a principal family of stops. Let's hear it. Do you remember what the flute sounded like? Here's that string. And then there's one final family of stops, and that was that Oregon duck sound that I played earlier. And these are reeds. This would be an oboe, the closest we can come to an oboe. Sounds like an English horn, or a bassoon. Okay, so those are the different orchestra sounds. So ladies and gentlemen, these little knobs on the side of the keyboards, is what we call stops. Do you know the expression, he pulled out all the stops? This is where it comes from. So if I pulled out all the stops on the organ, it would be very loud. I might do that before you leave today, okay? So these give me my choices. I've got the reeds, I got the strings, I got the flutes, I got the principals. And so I learned this through my schooling. Now, take a look at right underneath the keyboard. Do you see there's buttons? Under each keyboard, there's little buttons. And we have that here on this organ. So right underneath the keyboard, I can push a button and it'll bring on different sounds that I have pre-programmed so that I can change right on the fly by pushing with my thumb. Or can you see below, I don't want to move the bench, I'm sorry, but down below, and you can see it on the drawing as well, there are what are called toe studs down by the pedals. Those toe studs, if I push those with my feet, I can bring on prearranged sounds that I locked in, if you will, in order to move quickly through changes. All right. So I think there's a lot of humorous stuff in this drawing. But you get a little bit of an idea of, and it looks like there's a tired organist at the bottom right. He's very tired. Okay. All right. Now let's move ahead through the handout. So skip over the drawing with all the pipes, and then I'm going to let you read this. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but what did we say in the beginning? That pipes were basically like pan flutes. As you can see, they actually called the sheep, or they might have called the cows in using their pan flutes. Okay? And the drawing at the bottom where it says in the beginning, there's an angel, and that angel is carrying around what we call a portative. It's a portable organ. So people could walk around downtown, go to the Renaissance Fair, and play their organ. Okay? And then maybe some people would throw some change in the basket. Okay. And then on the next page, we see that the organ is developing more, and so you would sit down, and do you see, it looks like it's a woman. This is very sexist. It looks like the woman is pumping the bellows for the man. Okay, very sexist. And so, but you had to have someone pumping the air into the bellows. And then the one at the bottom, there's a very tired young man pumping bellows for the guy who's playing a bigger organ. So you can see the bellows are much larger as time developed. All right, let's do this. Let's take a little travel. I'm going to invite you to come up and take a look at the organ a little closely. I'm not going to insist, but this is your chance to kind of get out of your chairs. I'm going to sit at the organ. You can come closer. I'm going to demonstrate. I especially want you to look at the trackers that are above the keys so you understand that when I press a key, that the trackers are moving and going up and opening the holes for the bellows. Then also behind the organ, I want you to feel free to come in on Solveig. I'm going to let you monitor that because we shouldn't go inside, but I want to just take a look so you can see the ranks of pipes that are held in there. There's about 2,000 pipes in this organ. Okay, there's probably 10,000 working parts. How long did it take to build this organ? Probably a year. Just this one organ probably took a year. You're probably wondering how much it cost. You know what? I've lost track because of inflation is so ridiculous. But basically, it's about, I think now about $10,000 per rank. So this is 30 ranks. Let's just call it 30. So we're at a $3 million organ. It's $3 million to replace this organ. What are our ranks? Yeah.
No, just to say the rank is a stop, is a sound.
Yeah. Yeah, so Solveig was correcting me, and thank you for that. That a rank of pipes, basically, if you look at the pipes that are in front of you, friends, this would be a rank. So this would be your 61 notes. Now, there's not 61 pipes there, but there are 61 pipes for every stop. Okay? So when we talk about 61, that's a rank. And you'll see it when you go to the back of the organ, you'll see the pipes are all lined up in ranks. And the basic cost is about 10 grand. So this is a $3 million instrument. If we were to replace it today. Back in 1990 when this organ went in, it was probably well under $1 million. Well under $1 million. So it's frightful how expensive these instruments are. Okay, it's time to get up, and I'm going to be at the bench. Feel free to walk around. Do not touch. You bet.
Oh, I see. That's what it is. It's like a crochet hook.
Right. So for every key, everything's connected, and so it goes from here into the organ, and then there's more of these connections right here. So now let me show you, so you can see the inner workings here, but let me show you now when I press one of these pistons, watch the stops, they'll come on automatically. Do you see them moving?
Yeah.
Okay, so these, when I push these buttons, I can do them real quickly if I have to do immediate change with the music. So I can do it with my finger right here, or I can do it with my feet. If my fingers are too busy, I can do it with my feet.
Oh, those are the same thing as those.
Exactly, they are duplicated. So there's number 1 here, there's number 1 down below. Okay, and then just a reminder that swell box that you saw upstairs where I can get softer, I'm just gonna show you that I have to do that with my right foot. And then there's a second pedal here, and this second pedal brings on stops automatically. It's built into the organ. And so if I don't have freedom of my fingers or my feet, and I gotta bring stops on, listen to this. Nothing. Now here it comes. More, 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 more. So I just did that with my foot. It was an automatic thing that way. Okay? And I don't know if you noticed, but there's also some movement right here that these are bringing on certain stops as well. So this is all mechanical action. There's no electricity involved at all.
But you can reprogram it, so...
Just these buttons. The crescendo pedal, it has to be programmed by someone that's an expert. The builder would have to do it. Okay? Now, let me show you just a little bit else. There's this little dial right here. So let's say that I've got these, what are there's 10 buttons. I've got a level for 10 buttons right there. Now I can go to the next level by just turning the knob. I've got another 10 that I can pre-program. Turn the knob, I got another 10. That's 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. I have 80 possibilities on this organ. If I played an organ recital and I had to have 80 different sounds that I could program myself. So now that's a digital thing. That's electronic. That's a modern invention. Bach would have never had that. What Bach had was the action. Okay, so when I play, I don't know if you've had, maybe some of you are just now coming around, but notice again. Can you see the trackers?
Yeah.
This is exactly what Bach had. And then the levels of keyboard, he had organs most of the time that were 2 manuals like this. Sometimes he had a 3rd manual, never more than 3. In our modern day, there are some organs that do 4 manuals. The Wanamaker store in Philadelphia has 6 manuals.
Wow.
And the biggest one in Atlantic City, and it's on YouTube right now, just look up organ in Atlantic City, 7 manuals. And the manuals actually curve, so I'm actually playing like this on the top manual. It kind of curves that way. That's all electronic. Most organs are this ilk. St. Paul's organ has 2 manuals. The organ in Hudson Hall, 3 manuals. Okay. Okay. So the question about why are there different manuals? So do you remember I pulled out my Oregon Duck oboe? And so what I can do is I can play the solo on the oboe. Now, if I want to accompany that, then I need to find a softer sound like a flute to accompany with my left hand. And then the pedal, I'm going to have a soft sound too. So if I play, excuse me, there's a mistake here. Now I can dot it. So the solo's in my right hand and the accompaniment in my left.
Okay, but when you push that, it's making that go down. So this isn't its own keyboard. This just makes this keyboard work?
Okay, good job. This woman gets extra credit as well. There's just so many things to talk about.
I can see it.
Right, so I can take the sound from the keyboard and I can pull a knob and I can get that same sound by pulling this knob, and here it is.
On the foot.
So I just what we call coupled the sound from the manual down to the pedal, and I can just do that with one knob. It's what we call a coupler. So the swell division, the one that's way up there, I can just play that oboe, and I can play it right here. So it's a device to couple down. Does that make sense now? So I've got this series of stops that I can play solos on, or I can reverse it. This is not a very pretty stop. It's kind of loud and kind of ugly right now, but now I can play a piece that maybe you might know. Let me do my best here on the fly. So that time I used what's called the trumpet, very much a duck sound, and I was able to play trumpet voluntary by using the solo stop on the bottom manual and my accompaniment was on the top manual. I can reverse it if I need to, and then I can also take the sounds from the top manual and put it down here. So let's hear, do you remember the string sound that I was doing? Now, if I want that sound to be down here and just have a louder sound, I can do what we call couple. So I'm going to bring the swell. Did you see it moved right there? So this is bringing all the sound down here because I want it to be louder. So here. Now louder. And that's how I get the big organ sound that I can combine all of this together. Okay?
A question on the one pedal does the volume, but what does the other pedal do?
You mean this one?
Yes.
Right. So I think you might have been in the back of the organ. I did talk about it. So he's asking about, remember the crescendo pedal way up at the top? That closes and opens those shutters. This one on the right brings on sounds automatically as I push forward. Nothing. Now here I go. I'm adding, I'm pushing, I'm pushing, I'm pushing, pushing. More sound. So it all brings on things automatically.
What does the left pedal do?
And that's the one, remember the shutters were opening and closing?
Just shutters. Just shutters.
Right, so let's listen to that. If I just play a chord here, and this is the softest sound I can make. Now I'm going to crescendo those particular pipes just in that box up there.
I see.
And now I can get it softer. Okay.
Makes sense.
You ready to go back? And
What were the more manuals for?
the different manuals?
No, you've got two. You said you could have 3, 4, up to 7 or something.
Right.
What were the extra ones for?
All kinds of different combinations. You know, there might be a different kind of quality of sound on that manual, and so they'll solo that out on that manual and do different things. Those are usually very large organs.
Oh, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's so perfectly adequate for anything you want to
It
play.
is. It is. The middle of the road tracker organ. Yeah.
Earlier when you were playing, I noticed a number of the keys there automatically going down. Were they the ones that you were pressing on the...
Right. So I can bring this sound, this oboe.
Okay.
Now, if I want to have it down here for some reason because of this, I pull this, what we call a coupler,
Couple.
and so now,
Oh, I see.
right.
Okay.
So I'm bringing it down. And the cool thing about that is that I'm able to bring more sound on. So let's say, for example,
So you literally can pull out all stops.
well,
All the sounds.
I'll do it now before our break, okay? So this is pretty much, I've got this sound here. Now I'm going to crescendo with the swell shutters. Now that's the loudest sound I can make on this, but now I'm going to put it here with everything on this manual, and now we got a pretty loud sound. It's pretty much everything, but there is more to do. So so these are those presets. So they bring on different sounds that I've done in advance, and when I play later, you'll see me using those. So those are preset sounds.
So this is all mechanical, not electronic.
Correct. This is all, maybe just to see it.
Right. But it's releasing air. Is that
Right, so there's a blower sending air up, and then when I select this particular note, the whole pipe's opened up, and then when I press it, it opens the hole and the air shoots through. It's
So-
amazing.
the air is the bellows?
It's in the bellows. It's in a reservoir, so the air is coming in, it's being held in a reservoir, and there's this constant pressure
Back here underneath.
underneath.
Okay.
Yeah, see it.
On the old church organ in my little church on the reservation, there were 2 pedals, and that's the only way to
Oh,
get
yeah.
the sound, right?
Right, that
So
was your bellows.
That was the bellows.
That was your bellows. Yeah, absolutely right. All right, that was a fun field trip. What time is that? Usually now?
It's now, or
Okay.
it's 10 minutes, it can be at 11.
Okay.
Or it can't be much past 11.
Okay, my boss says you have a break coming, and I think I'll take it because I'm going to change my shoes, and I'm going to take a drink of water. Did you know I have to have special shoes to play the organ? Okay, and so I'll talk about that a little bit after the break.
Yeah, so I'm going to insert a quick, now that you've had so much knowledge about this instrument and about the whole deal. I was also an organ major. I switched to organ at 14 when I came into high school after 8 years of piano. So I just adored it from the very beginning, My high school boyfriend, when I was like junior or seniors, said this: You're such a fine organist. I thought I would expect you to be a better dancer. That's former boyfriend. And, oh yeah, I was hired as organist at First Methodist here in town in 1983. And when I got the job, then I said, how long has it been since the instrument has been cleaned and revoiced? And they said, well, when it was installed in 1956. I should tell you that the pipes in that instrument are behind a screen, behind all big screens. So they did that. They cleaned it and took 11 vacuum cleaner bags of volcanic ash out of the screens, which I had been blowing onto the congregation with every loud thing.
Break?
Yeah, break time. Yeah, we'll see you back. We'll call you at just after 11. Welcome Paul back, please.
All right, everyone. I love all the questions. You're doing great. So I'm in the handout now, and if you can find about halfway through the glossary. I'm sorry, the print is horrible. It's very small, so get out your magnifying glass if you want to read about the different terminology, and there's so much, okay? And I'm going to let you do that, but here's a little organ glossary for you to look through. And it goes on for a couple of pages. How about let's go over to the page that says bells and whistles. So bells and whistles, so there's just so much that the organist has to learn, right? You sit down at the piano and you just play the keys. On the organ, I have to play the keys, I have to play the foot pedals, I have to do a crescendo with the crescendo pedal, I have to push a piston, I have to pull a stop, all while I'm playing. Okay, so that's why I said 18 months to get to the point where you're kind of feeling like I've got this. There's so much to deal with as far as a logistical thing and a physical thing. The organ is a very physical instrument. Okay, so we're on bells and whistles. See that thing called pistons, that particular thing reminding you that those are the buttons right underneath the manual. So some of you ask, how do I set those up? There's a setter button. So I can pull on the oboe stop if I want to have that ready, and I can pull the oboe stop on, I can set it on the certain number. There's little buttons underneath, and I can set it there, and then I have that for the next piece. So that's a piston. That's just a name that we use for that. Tutti. What the heck is tutti? It's an Italian word that means all or everyone. Okay, so if you see an expression in music, tutti, that means everybody's playing, everybody's singing. In the organ, there's a special button that's called tutti. So if I push that tutti button, that means the whole thing comes on. I'll probably demonstrate that at about 11:59 today. But I do have a button. I can just push one button instead of having to pull all the stops on manually. That's my tutti button. How do I make the tremolo? What's another word for tremolo? Anybody, can you tell me what the word is for tremolo? Vibrato, exactly. So this organ does have a mechanism that can make it sound like a singing voice, that it's got vibrato. So let's pull on my favorite stop, the Oregon duck, and I'm going to play just one note. Okay, that's my duck sound. Now, if I want to have it have a little bit of vibrato, I have what's called a tremolo stop. I'm going to pull it on, push it off, Pull it on. You can hear it vibrating just a little bit, yeah? So I have a special mechanism for that. Crescendo pedal. Remember, we've talked about that already. So there's 2 crescendo pedals on this organ. The one that's on the left controlled those bellows at the very top. So that's swell division up there. All of those pipes that are enclosed up there, I can make that softer or louder by closing or opening. And then the one that's on the right, there's a second crescendo pedal. I can bring on stops automatically by pushing with my foot, and I can bring on stops to make it louder that way. Percussion, there's no percussion instruments on this organ. However, if you go to the Elsinore Theater here in Salem, there's plenty of percussion instruments on that organ there. That's a theater organ, and they've got everything. They got bass drums, they got snare drums, they got all kinds of stuff. Do you realize how lucky we are in Salem, Oregon to have a theater organ like that? It's unbelievable. I mean, you have to go to the big, big towns, and you realize that the theater organs, what were they used for? To accompany silent movies, right? That was how you got your music and you got the emotion of the movie. Okay, next page over, types of action. So if we look at the lady that's playing on the left, she's playing what I would consider to be the tracker action, which is this organ. So this is a mechanical action organ. So notice that she's pressing the key, the backfall sends a tracker up to the pipe, and it opens the toe, or the palate opening, and the wind rushes through. There's a reservoir of air that's being held because I've got a blower underneath the organ. I've turned it on. That's the only electricity. There's constant air going into a reservoir. And so the constant pressure is there at my disposal, and I play middle C, and the middle C sounds just like that. And this technology is 500 years old. That's how old it is. The guy on the left with the really bad mustache, that guy is playing an electro-pneumatic organ. Okay, so it's a pipe organ, but when he presses the key, do you see the wire that goes to the switch? That's an electrical signal that says, I want to play middle C, and middle C pipe opens up, and it plays just like that. I mean, it's almost instantaneous. There's the slightest little delay, but you get used to it after a while. So tracker action organ, the one that's, I'm trying to think, how about St. Mark Lutheran? If you know that organ there, St. Timothy's Episcopal Church, a lot of the organs in Salem are electro-pneumatic. The one at St. Paul's is this kind, mechanical action. The one in Hudson Hall, electronic everything. Everything's electronic, digital. Remember, if you want to major in organ at Willamette, you have every possibility at your disposal. Ready to go to pitches available on the organ? Is that your next page? Pitches available? Ladies and gentlemen, did you realize the organ is a transposing instrument? Okay. So the one thing that we have not talked about that makes the organ so flexible is that as I add stops, I can actually make it create an organ that has very high pitches and very low pitches. So let's start from the middle of the organ, if you will. So there are stops here that are certain levels. I'm going to give you an example here. I think that it might be this one over here. I think this one of these is 8 feet tall. It might be this guy right here. Okay, so we do it in terms of math. So this lowest pitch, which would be low C, that pipe is literally 8 feet tall. And so when you look at the stop knob, I'm going to pull the principal stop on, and I'm going to play low C. It's that big pipe right there. Okay, so that's 8 feet tall. Now, if I go an octave higher, that pipe is 4 feet tall. I've just cut it in half by octave. Then this one is 2 feet tall. 1 foot, 6 inches. Okay, so that's just that one stop. Now, what I can do is I can also have a stop that is labeled 4-foot. Okay, so I'm going to pull on a 4-foot, and I'm going to play low C. That pipe is literally 4 feet tall, and it's inside somewhere. Okay, so that's my 4-foot stop. Now I'm going to add my 8-foot. Listen. So I'm playing one note, but I've got 2 pipes sounding. One that's 8 feet tall, and the second pipe is 4 feet. Once again, listen to the 8-footer. Now I'm going to add the 4-foot stop. It's labeled 4-foot, and this one is it comes out an octave higher. Still playing one note. Now I can go yet another one and go another octave higher. Here's the 2-foot. Playing one note, 3 pipes, all at the same time. Okay, so if you can imagine with a full chord, let's just take a garden variety C major chord. This is just one stop, 8-foot. It's labeled 8-foot. Remember the low C is 8-foot. And then it gets smaller. But here's my C major chord. Now I'm going to add another stop that's labeled 4-foot, so everything is an octave higher plus the one below. Without octave higher. I can go another octave higher. Here's 2-foot. You hear the difference? It just gets louder. So I'm playing 4 notes, but there are 12 pipes being sounded at that moment. Okay? And then I can add even more stops. I can add this really ugly trumpet, and it gets louder. So that's just 4 stops out of 29. And that's pretty loud already. Okay? So that's the transposing part of the instrument. Now, we used benchmark of low C being 8 feet tall. So once again, you're probably wondering, well, you know, when you have your tuning fork and everybody tunes to A440, that's this pitch right here. So you hear the orchestra tuning up, they always do this. Now, with the organ, I can add another octave above that. And so, again, I can do the 4-foot, and we have 2 pipes sounding. So that's, if you will, that's the bass, 8-foot. Now, guess what? I have 16-foot. Okay, so there are some pipes behind the organ that are literally 16 feet tall. And so I'm going to play that note for you. Now remember, I have to do low C. So this pipe is 16 feet tall. Okay, so that's my base of the organ, 8-foot. I'm going to add the 16. You can actually feel it in the room, can't you? So on this organ, I've got 8, and I can go down to 16. I've got 8, I can go to 4. I can go to 2. So all of that expanse makes the beauty and the vitality of the instrument quite arresting. There are other intonation possibilities. There are what we call 2 2/3. So instead of a 2-foot, it could be a 2 2/3. And so here I'm going to show you that. Let's hear 8-foot again. That's low C. C above. Now here's middle C. That's middle C. Now remember, 4-foot adds an octave, 2-foot, another octave. Now in this case, I'm going to have the 2 2/3, which is the 5th. That's a G. It's sounding a G, but I can use this in kind of a combination that makes it sound kind of cool. So if I want to play a melody, I can use that. It kind of sounds like an oboe, but I'll let you judge. So if I play... So there's I build it from 8, 4, 2, 2 2/3, And then there's one more, 1 3/5, brings in the third. All kinds of different possibilities. It's so cool. I love it. It's so much fun. All right, so those are the different transpositions. I have that all in my fingertips. And we talked about flue pipes. Those are the flutes or the principals. Those are open pipes, the ones that you see in front of you. Basically, it's just one big cylinder. And at the very top, there's a ring at the top that you can adjust by going higher or lower to make it go sharp or flat. And so the organ needs to be tuned on a regular basis. The organ is affected by temperature. So you can imagine that the properties of the metal and the wood, by the way, there's wood pipes in here as well, that those pipes are affected by temperature. They shrink, they expand, just like anything else. And during that shrinkage and the expansion, sometimes they all don't go the same way, and they're a little bit out of tune. So literally have to go through every pipe and go sharp or flat to make it sound right. I'm going to confess to the organ is out of tune. There will be some places where you'll go, the organ needs tuning. I'm aware. I'm very aware. All right, what's on the next page? Flutes, we've talked about flutes. The flutes can be metal or copper. This is a combination of tin and copper in this organ. The flutes can also be made of wood. I don't know if you might have seen that when you peeked in. There are wood pipes in here, and those are generally flutes. Remember the original? Who did the ancient people, how did they make their flutes? They cut up a piece of wood and blew into it, and that's still thousands of years later. The reed pipe is that one that I told you about. It sounds like a duck. And the thing that makes this reed pipe unusual is that there's a reed inside. It's a small piece of metal, and it's resting up against another part of the pipe, and it vibrates really fast. So it kind of has this nasal quality, remember? And you can tune it. I don't know if you can see it. I think I'm going to pass it around, but be super careful. Hold it by the bottom, and you'll see this little wire. And the wire is the thing that I can hit up and down and make it go sharp or flat. So just hold it very delicately, only on the bottom, and pass it around. And that you are holding a real organ pipe. Okay? So we talked about reeds. I'm getting a little bit. There's my paper. Yep, so this one that I'm passing around to you now is a reed pipe. The stops can be identified by trumpet or by oboe. Those are typical. Have you ever heard of a crumhorn? Crumhorn is an ancient instrument played mostly in the Renaissance. There's crumhorn stops on organs like this. We don't have one. We just have an oboe, which sort of sounds like an oboe, and we have a very obnoxious trumpet on this organ. So that's what we have here. And now we're into the mixtures and the mutations, and this might be just a little bit much for your head today, but the mixtures give the brilliance to the organ. So remember, 8, 4, 2. Now there are some organs that have 1. We don't have a 1 foot, but we can go those 4 different octaves playing 1 pitch. The mixtures are actually 4 pipes at one time, and they're doubled up, and they're pretty high. Let me demonstrate for you. So the mixture gives that brilliant sound to the organ that is fun for me to play on Sunday mornings on the big hymns. Okay, here we go. 8, 4, 2. Now I could do 1 foot, but I don't have a 1 foot stop on this organ. Now here's the mixture. If I play a chord, 8, 4, 2. Mixture. Really brilliant. So if I really want to get the congregation to sing strong, I will play with the mixture. So once again, if we hear the difference, 8 foot, Add the forefoot. Add the 2. Add the mixture. Add the trumpet. So that's how we build it up. Okay, so that's the mixtures, the mutations. I talked to you about that. 2 2/3, 1 3/5, and that sort of thing. All right, I'm going to stop and I'm going to play a little bit. The reason I want to stop here is that we've talked about the different kinds of pipes, the flutes, the strings, the principals, and the reeds. You're going to hear that in this piece. I'm going to use all the different sounds, and they'll also be at different pitch levels. So I chose this piece on purpose. It's called a partita. A partita is a piece of music that you take a basic tune, and then there's variations on that tune. So this is a piece that would have been written during Bach's time. So this is based on an old German piece, and it's a really weird title. It's hard to pronounce. O wie nichtig, which means oh nothing. O wie flüchtig, oh how fleeting. So this hymn that was sung in the German congregation, still is to this day, is about the transience of life, that our life is fleeting, it's high, it's low, we're born, we die. And that's what this chorale is all about. So it's in a minor key, it's not a happy piece, but you'll hear some happiness. Okay, so there's about 7 or 8 different variations, and you'll hear the different timbres and the different pitch levels. I might talk in between, but here we go again. Now this is a hymn that the Germans still sing to this day, and certainly sang during Bach's time. Now this is a pretty big introduction. It sounds like this. very sorry I didn't tell you the composer. Georg Boehm, B-O-H-M, German Boehm. Contemporary of Bach, lived in Germany, and so he would have been doing the same kind of thing that Bach was doing. All right, so we're going to go to talk about some divisions here. So if you can find the page that talks about divisions. So when we use that term, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the different levels of the keys. So if you will, the top keyboard is a certain division. And that division of the organ is the one that's in the back with the shutters. We call that the swell box. Okay, so open the swell box, close the swell box. I have control over the volume. The second level is what we call the great organ or the grand organ. In Germany, they would have called it the Hauptwerk, main work of the organ. In France, they called it the Grand Orgue, the grand, big part of the organ. In America, we call it the great. And so the pipes that you see exposed here that are not a part of the shutter box, that would be the great organ. Guess what? I have no control over the volume there. It's either on and off. But I can make it louder by adding another stop, as you heard me do. But once I pull this particular rank of pipes right here, that's what you see is what you get on the organ. So that's the great division. Swell division is behind. Pedal is the third division on this organ. Okay, so there's a complete set of stops devoted to the pedal, and those particular pipes, you don't see them. Well, actually, the big one that I was telling you, the 8-footer, that is part of the pedal division. Okay, so let's take a look at the stops so that you understand. How are they divided up? Right here, well, let me do this. These four right here, those are pedal stops. Okay, so these four completely are pedal stops. Then the 2 rows of stops right here, that is completely for this manual, the swell, which is the one with the shutter box, okay? On this side here I go. There's a couple of stops right here that are also pedal. They're obnoxious. This would be called a bombard or a trombone. I'll play the trombone for you in a bit. And then I have a trumpet stop that is in the pedal alone, okay? I'm gonna skip these two just for a second. Now, here we go. These 2 rows of stops, that's the main organ. Okay, so these stops go for this one, those go for this one, and then like I say, the pedal is down below. Now some of you are asking, why do you play on certain manuals? It's part of my training. I've decided, if I want to have an oboe sound, my oboe is up here. If I want to have a trumpet, I'll play it down here, and my hands can go either way, depending on the demands of the music. Now, I can take the sounds from this organ and put them down here. What's called a coupler, I'm going to couple it down here. So I can take these stops, which is a swell, and I can put it down here and combine it with this by a coupler, and that's what this is right here. I can also take the sounds from these keyboards and I can take it down to the pedal by means of another coupler. So this is all mechanical action. This is 500 years old, this technology. That's the way it was back then. You want to hear the trombone? Let's hear the trombone. It's pretty obnoxious. It's my trombone. Trumpet down on the pedal. I can also play. Okay, so those are our different divisions. And again, I learned this studying the instrument. And you just know, sometimes composers will say, I want you to use an oboe stop here, or there should be a trumpet or a string or a flute. Some composers will do that, but that's mostly the function of more recent composition from the 19th century into the 20th and 21st century. Before that, during Bach's time, Mozart a little bit. Did you know Mozart wrote organ music? He did. And it's really hard music. In those earlier days, they didn't write the stopped indications down in the composition. You just kind of knew. It was just passed on from teacher to student and that sort of thing. But during the more contemporary times, there's more idea of what those are. Okay, so there's a question about why do organs have more manuals than this? The one in Hudson Hall, 3 manuals. So I have what's called the swell. I have that division that I can raise or lower. I've got the great, the Hauptwerk, the main organ, and then I've got something called the positive, or the choir organ. So it's a special organ division that might be a little bit smaller, and it might have a crumb horn. There's no crumb horn on this organ, but it might have something special. In Europe, if you've ever seen the organs where you have the big organ and then there's this little case on the edge of the balcony, look sometime. The case that's on the balcony is the positive. That's the smaller one. And so in Europe, a lot of organs that you play, you know, you would be playing here, the main organ is, and then right here, I'm up in the balcony. Okay, right on the balcony edge, there's a positive. So I'm playing with my back, with the organ sounding back here. That's typical for some of the large churches in Europe. We can go to a 4th manual. I'm trying to think if it talks about that. Yeah, we got the positive, we got the choir. Sorry. There's also a division called the solo and the bombard. I don't know if you're seeing those. So the solo would be maybe a division on very large organ that would have really, really loud pipes for solos. Have you ever seen an organ where the pipes are sticking out horizontally? So those, look for them. They're on very large organs. See if you see pipes that are going horizontal instead of vertical. Those are the solo divisions. Those are the really loud stops like bombards and tubas and that sort of thing. And so that would be a 4th manual, and then it gets ridiculous after that. Have you ever heard of the Riverside Church in New York City? Okay, it's a big church on, help me, I forget the street. Riverside Drive. Duh. Riverside Drive. And it's way up north on the west side. It's an amazing place. Rockefeller built the place. It's amazing. It looks like a Gothic cathedral. That organ has 5 manuals. I'll never forget, I went on a trip to New York City as a student and I got to play that instrument. Did everybody get a chance to see it? Yeah. Did you get a chance? So that organ is ridiculous. This has 29 ranks. The one at Riverside probably has 150 ranks. It's huge. And then we get even more ridiculous. The Wanamaker store in Philadelphia, which is now closed down. Did you hear that? Yeah, Wanamaker turned into Macy's, and they had this organ in there that was built by John Wanamaker, who, what was his profession, Neil? Do you remember what he did? Rich guy who put this organ in the Macy's store, or in whatever that store was called. Wanamaker's, I think, maybe. Anyway, it turned into a Macy's, and it's 6 manuals. It's huge. And they would do concerts every week. And unfortunately, the store closed, and now the organ is still there, and I think they're just doing music concerts in the store. But it just happened like a year ago. It's a tragedy. And the largest organ in the world is in the United States. Atlantic City, on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, 7 manuals. Unbelievable, like 200 ranks. And it's just all over the place. It's a huge instrument. But we can claim that in the United States. Of course, everything's bigger in the United States, right? I'm going to pause and have some questions from you now. I am going to play a couple pieces. I'm aware of the time, but now let's do questions. I didn't do anything.
No, I turned this on.
It was you? All right. Let's have you ask your first question.
I'm Anne, and 50 years ago, I was taking
harpsichord lessons from the professor who also taught organ. I assumed it was because of his organ experience.
I think so. Yeah.
It was just intuitive, but I didn't see.
All right, her question is the touch. What kind of touch is different on the organ, perhaps maybe from the piano? And then she brought up the issue about harpsichord. We all know about the harpsichord. So the harpsichord came before the piano. You all know that, right? The piano is a 19th century invention. Only in the 1800s is when the piano came around during Beethoven's time. So what did Mozart play on? He was before Beethoven. Mostly harpsichord and something we call the clavinova. It's a different kind of instrument. It's a precursor to the piano. So harpsichord's older than the piano, and the organ is much older than anything else. Okay, so you were asking about touch. On the organ, the harder that I push, it won't be louder, right? So my technique is what I call a very enclosed technique. I can't get very flamboyant with my elbows, because if I do that, I'm just adding pressure and stress to my body. Okay, so it's all about in the fingers, ma'am. It's right here. Same with the harpsichord. The harpsichord is different from the piano in that it doesn't strike the string, it plucks the string, sort of like a harp. That's why it's called a harpsichord. Okay, so it plucks in the instrument. So that's the evolution that way. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the harder I push in, I'm not going to really get different results. Different players for different strokes, if you will. But thank you for asking.
All of the pipes have lips at same levels, and how do you get different sound?
These lips, did you say?
Yeah, because they're on each side, the lips are at the same point.
Right, so the lips are at different levels here. It's just the size of the pipe, I think. So the lip has to be at a certain part of the pipe. You can't really tell, but these pipes are different lengths. It's being hidden by the facade just a little bit. So then therefore, some of the lips are lower than others.
The ones on the right and the left, are they the same then?
Mm-hmm. This is all part of the same rank, and they are functioning pipes. A lot of pipes that you see in some organs are fake. It looks pretty. This looks pretty, and they work. It's really pretty cool. Neil, go ahead.
My name is Neil, and I realize that this talk could go on for several more hours. There's so much to say about the organ. But you didn't talk at all about music, and I believe you went to Europe and played Bach's organ.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at music written by a particular composer, are there indications in the music itself to tell you what stops it should be played?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, back in the old days, in Bach's day, did he specify what stops to use? The answer is no. Didn't do much, but there are indications in some of the manuscripts that says that you should play this on the positive, or this should be on the swell, or the great. So he would indicate a smaller sound maybe for the swell and that sort of thing. But he didn't really talk about flutes or principals or anything like that. I mean, you could read in some of the documentation that Bach would use these kind of things, but it wasn't in the music at all, Neil. It didn't come till the 19th century. What other questions? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I assume that there's a whole class of people known as organ tuners. And how long does it take to, say, tune an organ like this, and what's the process?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so she's asking about how do you tune the instrument and how long does it take? So I would consider this to be a small, medium-sized organ as far as organs go, because, for example, the one in Hudson Hall is twice as big as this one in scope. There's no pipes, but it's twice as big as this one. And so to tune this organ, you have to tune every pipe. Now, there's 2,000 pipes in this organ. Now, if I say, hey, Mr. Tuner, I need you to come on May 1st, because it's out of tune. There are some pipes that stay pretty solid, and you hardly ever have to touch them, and there's certain kinds of pipes, and so we use them as our base for other pipes that tend to be more affected by temperature. How long does it take? 6 hours to tune an organ like this. How long does it take to tune a piano? 2 hours. If it's in bad shape, it takes longer. This organ is out of tune a little bit. It needs to be tuned. I think we need to bring somebody in for 6 hours, and then we'll be sounding a little bit better. But that's what we do. Yes, ma'am?
My name's Kathy. Can you play the difference between a wooden pipe and a metal pipe? Do you know which one?
Yeah, you're slightly stumping me because I'm not as familiar with what's wooden, but I think I can take a guess. I think this flute is metal. I'm pretty sure. So it's pretty soft. And then this one's more open. I think this is wood. Metal. Wood. It feels like it's got a little bit more of a hollow sound, the wooden one. It's a little hard to disseminate. And I would say in this organ that the wood pipes are about only 10 to 20%. The rest of the organ is kind of what you see here. Good question, thank you. Calliope. You're stumping me, you people. Can anybody answer what is a calliope? I think I have an idea, but it's sounded through different like pipes with wind driven. So the calliope is similar, I think. Calliope is maybe more of a portable thing that you see at the circus, and then they go to the next circus, and then they go to the next circus. Thank you, you stumped me. Question?
Hi, this is Dave. My dad had an air compressor in the garage, and it made a lot of noise. Where is the air coming from? Mm-hmm. Is it down the basement or something? Or we're not hearing it?
I'm stumped again. I'm not exactly sure where the blower is, but it is underneath the organ, and I think it is downstairs in the basement area, but I've never seen it. I've gone up inside the organ, and I've tuned this organ myself because I had to. But I believe the blower's downstairs, so it's pumping that air into the reservoir. That's where it is. So I just turn it on, and it's ready to go. Shall we hear some music? I'm aware of the time. I will play a little bit of Bach, but I think I want to show you another piece by another contemporary of Bach. So this is Johann Pachelbel. Okay, so North German composer, just like the other composer. But this particular piece is what's called a chaconne. A chaconne is like a piece that's based on variations. This is not based on a chorale. It's an original tune, so you'll hear the tune, but a chaconne is always in 3/4 time. Okay, so it's always in 3/4 time, and it has what we call a ground bass. So the bass, listen for the progression, the bass will be the same on every one of the variations. This is chaconne in F minor by Pachelbel. It takes about 8 minutes. Solveig, would you help? I think it'd be better on this side. Nope. I'm going to start one more time. I just have See, this is the problem. There's too many things to remember. Too much. Okay, now I'm going to start again. No, that's still wrong. Gosh, Solveig. I'm pretty sure that that's one of them, brother. Okay. Still not right. Just give me a second. just in time for a few more questions, and then I'll play you out. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'll have traveling music for you at the end. Yes, ma'am, go ahead with your question.
So are there any contemporary compositions using that?
Yes. So there's compositions being written to this day at this hour for an organ like this that could be played. And it's a very, very, very full and fruitful composition world out there for the organ. It's still being written and very imaginative. Absolutely. Thank you.
Are those stops used in all the different parts? You say they weren't written down at the time. So do you still have choice in doing that? Everybody, if someone else played it, they do it completely different.
Right. So she's asking, why did I choose the stops? And because it wasn't written down. So that is on me. But there's some traditions, like for example, the quality of the composition might guide you toward, this would be a flute sound. Like for example, this sound here where you heard me playing arpeggios at the very end, this is definitely this kind of sound. You just kind of know when you see it. That combination is an 8-foot and a 2-foot, no 4-foot. Kind of cool sound, don't you think? So my best answer is you learn it, but there is some leeway that makes it personal. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Brilliantly done. I loved it.
Thank you.
I wondered if you'd comment about the whole concept of basso continuo and how in the Baroque period, and this is such a perfect example of that.
So her question is the word basso continuo. So this is a Baroque term for what you would have heard in Bach's day, and Bach championed this, I mean, more than anybody else. Did you know that Bach wrote over 200 cantatas based on hymns and seasons of the church year? And when you hear a Bach cantata, I mean, Buxtehude did this too, Bachabel did as well. All of these composers would write with the following instruments in their head. Usually violins, violas, cellos, and bass. And then there would be a combination of oboes sometimes, and there would be trumpets. Now, these are primitive instruments compared to what we have. The strings are very similar, but the oboe's pretty primitive, and the trumpets didn't have any valves at that time. They did it all with their lips. So that's basically the orchestras that were being used at that time. There's no clarinets. There were trombones, they were called sackbuts, and they weren't used very much. Okay, but that was the basic. Now, the basso continuo, what is that? That's the cello line. The bass would play that line, and the organ was a part of the basso continuo. And the organ would play the chords based on the bass notes. So for example, if I'm playing a C and I want a C major chord, the cello's playing a C, and the organ is playing C, E, and G for the C major chord in that person's hand. And they were called a basso continuo group. They were always there. And the organ functioned that way all the time. The organist played more notes than anybody else. Just want you to know. And we didn't get paid any extra, I'm telling you. Okay. So this organ is exactly the kind of organ that would have been used for that, and sometimes they would have been what we call positive organs. They would have been little box organs. And we have one at St. Paul's, a little box organ, so that you could go to the next church and play the cantata. Good question. Yeah. So I'm going to play you out. I'm going to play just little snippets of Bach. I'm not going to play complete pieces, and then I'm going to improvise on a piece that I think, I'm just going to make it up. Okay, I bid you a good day. Thank you.